Hi, this is TK,
And I'm Tony.
and welcome to the Barbenheimer weekend, where we're going to do a double feature review on the movies Oppenheimer and Barbie, which opened this weekend. We're going to start with Oppenheimer, which we caught on opening day, 7/17, and saw it in IMAX. As you can see, I have on my fedora in honor of Oppenheimer. You want to go ahead and do the setup and of the story and the plot and things like that?
This is the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer. He was one of the original developers of the atomic bomb back in, I believe it was 41. Essentially, the government got a group of scientists together, of which he was the leader, to develop the first atomic bomb.
All right.
This is his backstory and his road to get to that particular point in history and what happens to him after. All right, this is the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer. He was the original lead of the atomic bomb development program back in the 40s, 41. We were, of course, we had just beat Germany, and we're deciding what to do about Japan, and he got assigned to create this team of scientists to develop the first atomic bomb. And this is the story of the lead up to get him to that point and what happened to his life after the fact. Overall, I thought it was a really good movie. Beyond being historically accurate, it went to detail about his life, and I didn't think it had enough technical aspects to hold my attention, but overall I think it was a good movie.
You want to talk about a little bit about the performances and things like that? Do you have anything to say about that? Or
I thought the performances were well overall. Cillian Murphy did a good job of being Oppenheimer. There were so many actors coming through and doing stuff. It kept your attention. After a while, though, I think this became the Robert Downey Jr. movie rather than Oppenheimer. So that was an interesting take on how they handled it.
all right, so that was Tony's take on Oppenheimer. I'm gonna talk a little bit, or actually a lot, about my feelings on this movie. I'm gonna start first with what I liked about the movie, and feel free to jump in here if you want to counterpoint. So I liked some of the cast members, specifically Matt Damon, who plays the general who's overseeing, I believe it's called the Los Alamos Project.
Yes.
Right, which was the project that they were creating this atomic bomb under. I liked the scenes between he and Murphy a lot. Those were my favorites in the movie. I loved Robert Downey Jr. I think what's his name? Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan has described Robert Downey Jr. as one of the best actors of our generation, and I agree. I know Tony's not a huge fan. It's not like I seek out everything that he's in or whatever. I just think that he happens to run circles around most of his scene partners in any of the movies I've seen him in. I've never seen anybody just top him. Perhaps Robert Duvall. There's actually a movie where they play a father and son lawyers, and I forget what the name of the movie is. I saw it years ago, but I think he was the only one that's ever been able to match Robert Downey Jr. in a performance in the movie. The third thing I liked about Oppenheimer is the sound design. Christopher Nolan is known for his sound design, his visuals. That's one of his signatures, I guess, as a director. And this didn't disappoint. There were key scenes, specifically when there were big crowds, and I think with the stomping and things like that. And I think you were impressed with the Trinity explosion or whatever that was.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of sound design is knowing when not to use sound. So the whole movie we were waiting for the first explosion of an atomic bomb, and there was this 2-hour and 30-minute build-up. So I was intrigued and impressed with how he handled it. Basically, he sucked all the sound out of that situation, where you think it would be the opposite. So it was more of an artistic bent overall that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I think that was called the Trinity detonation, which is the project was called, which was the explosion, the test explosion that happened before we actually used the bomb. on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in World War II. So yeah, I thought that was a great scene too. And finally, the movie looked great in certain parts, but after doing a little research on this movie, I discovered that part of it was filmed in IMAX and part of it wasn't. And there was actually, when we went to see it on opening day, there was a theater attendant who explained that to us, and we couldn't really hear what he was saying, but that was part of it. Is that don't expect all of it to be in IMAX because it wasn't shot that way, which I don't understand why it had to be an IMAX experience if all of the movie wasn't shot that way. But there were certain parts of the movie, I should say, that I thought looked good, and certain parts did not look so good. And I don't know if it was the differences in the camera or not. You have any thoughts on that, or?
No, again, it might have been very helpful. I could hear the gentleman and what he said, but I'll take your word for the entire thing not being shot in IMAX. It's kind of surprising that they didn't make that big production about it, but not shoot at all. So
You're right. Yeah. So let's get to my dislikes, and unfortunately, they outweigh the likes. First, let me say that Christopher Nolan directed one of my favorite films that I can watch over and over again because I think it's funny, and it probably shouldn't be funny, but I just thought it's called The Prestige. Do you remember what year that came out?
let's say early aughts.
Yeah, definitely that, but I don't remember the exact year. But anyway, I love that movie. It stars Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman, and they play these dueling magicians who spend years trying to one up each other, and it started with a tragedy. But anyway, a little off the subject. But if you get an opportunity, check that out because I love that film. But I always forget that Christopher Nolan actually directed the film because I'm just not a huge fan of his. But I'll get to that in just a little bit. But if you ever get a chance to see The Prestige, if you haven't seen it already, check it out. But let me say that the things I did not like about this film, and a big part of it was Cillian Murphy, who plays Oppenheimer. I didn't like his performance. I went into this movie not knowing a lot about the man's life or even the history behind this development of the first atomic bomb. I think it was the first one, right? Or the Russians do it first?
It was the first.
Okay, so I didn't know the story well. I did a little research on Oppenheimer himself about his life before we saw the movie because we'd had tickets for this movie for months,
About 8
right?
weeks.
Yeah, for weeks because he was really looking forward to seeing it, and I like to learn new things about subject matters I didn't know about. So I'm like, why not? But I felt like, in spite of the movie's long running time, that Murphy's performance didn't really make me understand the character any better than I already did, which was essentially I knew nothing about Oppenheimer.
Did you think it was too laid back? Is that what was wrong?
I'm not a big fan of Cillian Murphy in general. I was trying to find, there was a quote that Robert Downey Jr., his co-star in this film, who plays Strauss, I forget his first name, he was given, like, I guess he was talking to the press, and he mentioned something about the kind of actor he is. He didn't say he's a character actor. He characterized it in some other way, and I can't remember his exact words. But I do know that I remember the quote where he mentioned that also that he felt kind of iced out by Murphy when he was shooting this project. So I don't think he's giving he gives much as a scene partner. I think he is, to your point, a little too laid back and icy. And I can't think of anything that I really liked him in.
Well, it should be noted that is really part of the character of Oppenheimer. So you can't tell necessarily if that's his acting style or whether he was doing a good job playing Oppenheimer.
Table. The third thing that I didn't like about this movie was too many players and not enough character development. Again, citing the long running time of 3 hours and 4 minutes, I would have expected to see more character development. Part of the draw to this movie for me was his complicated relationship between his mistress and his wife. And I really didn't even really get a clear sense of. I knew he was a complicated man. He had a complicated relationship with both of these women, but I was hoping to see a little bit more character development of those two women since they were such big parts of his life. You mentioned something about you had a beef with so many characters too, right? Coming in.
Only from the perspective that nobody gets sufficient time to shine. I mean, save Robert Downey Jr. I mean, eventually it got to the point where I think this was his movie and not Cillian Murphy's anymore.
As I think it should have been. I think they should have gotten him to play.
Maybe they were. There you go. But what I had a problem with is the frenetic pace. 3 hours and 5-6 minutes. There was a lot to cram in here, and you could tell they were running the whole time to do so. There was never a scene where things slowed down and you got some exposition or took things into perspective or anything. It's just bam, bam, introduce new actor, introduce new actor, introduce new actor, move on. And there's a section at the end wherein it calls for you to remember specific characters and things that happened. And I'm like, I was so confused by so many characters being introduced, I didn't know who they were talking about. And I'm sure that was important to the plot. But yeah, it was a lot of people coming and going. Great cast, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, too many characters, too quick of a pace, which didn't allow enough character development for me. The fourth thing I didn't like about this movie was the dialogue. It was kind of hard to understand sometimes because many of the actors had to talk in a German accent or naturally had a German accent. And I kind of wish the movie had closed captioning because it was really hard for me to understand some of the things they were saying. And maybe it was the audio in the theater we were in, but we saw it. We had the IMAX experience, so all of that was supposed to be on point. But and finally, there were. This is nitpicky, but there were parts, key moments in the movie, key scenes where the music was just a bit too much. It just kind of like hit you in the face, like, "Oh, this is a key scene. Pay attention." But it was a little overwhelming to the scene itself. Again, very small.
Too on the nose, too over the top.
Right. Like, yeah, this is the key scene flashbulb. But yeah, so I mean, overall, my final thoughts on the movie was again that these characters or these directors with these overblown egos and these self-serving projects, which are 2.5+ hours long, but really don't give you a lot of substance on the plot or character development. I'm over it. He shares that in common, I think, with James Cameron. Christopher Nolan does, and to be honest with you, the Christopher Nolan left a bad taste in my mouth during the pandemic when he was insistent on people risking their lives going to the theater to see that movie that nobody saw with when Denzel Washington's son in it. Yeah, we both forget the name of the movie because you haven't seen it yet, right?
I still haven't seen it.
Yeah, so I'm just not a huge fan of his in general, and that's Yeah.
Now that you bring it up, I remember there was discussion at the time about problems with the sound design of that movie.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And now we're having another movie as with somewhat similar issues. I don't know.
Well, his sound design was good. I just had as far as the audio goes, I just had a problem with hearing certain of the characters, understanding them more than anything else. So I don't know if that was part of sound design or what. But I took a lot of notes on this movie, so I'm glancing down at it. So, I think I've honed in on a point many times, is that I don't think there was a need for this movie to be so long. And this segment is called Ticket or Stream It. It's a stream it for me. If you are not a science nerd or a huge Christopher Nolan fan specifically.
Which ironically, there wasn't that much science in this movie.
You don't think?
No. In fact, I was hoping there'd be a little bit more into terms of how they developed it, the interaction itself. That's beside the point in this movie.
I don't agree. I guess they knew enough to know that it wouldn't be as accessible to general audience if it was too much science. But I think I was sitting next to some physicists, some science students or whatever, because they laughed at a lot of the things, reacted to a lot of the science talk in the movie. But I think that overall, if you don't know the history before you go into this movie, you're not going to be able to appreciate it. And I'm not a history buff, so I didn't know a lot about Oppenheimer, if anything. And I walked away from this movie feeling like I wasn't any more knowledgeable or got more of his motivations, right? So it's a stream it for me because I think that unless you want the IMAX experience, and again, unless you're a huge Christopher Nolan fan and just have to rush out and see all of his movies, that it probably won't be as much of an enjoyable experience for the general audience. What do you think? A ticket or stream it?
I think it's a stream it too.
Yeah.
Overly long, not enough science, too many characters, too long. Yeah, too long. I don't know how he could have improved it other than, again, maybe focusing less on all the characters and more on the science, but it's a stream it.
Yeah, so those are our thoughts on Oppenheimer. Stay tuned because we're going to go check out Barbie after this because
joy.
I had to drag him to go see it, but I really want his perspective on it because I hear it's such a fun movie. But we're not here to talk about Barbie right now. We're talking about Oppenheimer. Those were our thoughts on Oppenheimer. Let us know in the comments what you guys think about it. And please be sure, if you like this and our other content, be sure to like our videos and subscribe so you can get notifications on our other content. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.